Guys, you read the title right. I'm gonna be reacting to his story. So let's start with this short. Let's click on
I
it.
was walking to meet my friend when suddenly I stepped on a loose manhole cover and fell straight down into the sewer. I screamed and landed hard in freezing water. When I looked up, the manhole I'd fallen through was way too high to reach. I yelled, "Help! Somebody!" But no one saw me fall in. Then I heard a deep rushing sound getting louder. Before I could move, a wall of water slammed into me and swept me down the tunnel. As I was being dragged, I wondered how the hell was I going to get out of here. The current dragged me through the dark, slamming me into the walls. I went under and swallowed the nasty poopy water, kicking as hard as I could just to get my head up because I couldn't swim. I tried to reach for my phone to call for help, but it was gone. The water had ripped it right out of my pocket, and I had no way to contact anyone. Then I saw a ledge up ahead and attempted to grab it, but my body slammed into the concrete and I felt something crack in my ribs. I screamed but pulled myself up anyway, inch by inch, until I was finally out of the water. I laid there soaked and shaking. I had no phone, no way out, and the manhole was probably a mile behind me by now. Nobody knew I was down here, and I thought I was going to die being covered in poop and pee-pee. But then I heard voices above me. "Hey, he's down here!" And a flashlight hit my face. Firefighters lowered a rope and pulled me up out of the sewer. When I finally got to the street, gasping, my friend was standing right there. "Dude, you smell like but you're alive." I was confused. "How did you even know I was down here?" "I saw the whole thing. I was waiting for you across the street when you just dropped into the ground and I called 911. The firefighters said it took so long because the water swept me so far." I almost cried of relief until my friend held up his phone. He'd recorded me falling and laughed. "Is it okay if I post it?" I was walking to
Okay, so next short, y'all.
The mall Santa pulled my son onto his lap, and when my son thought I wasn't listening, he said, "I don't want anything for me. I just want my dad to get a better job so he can stop being sad that he can't buy me the bike for Christmas." My eyes widened, and that's when I knew I had to get him that bike, even if it killed me. When we got home, I tore through every drawer and found nothing worth selling. I looked down at my wrist and saw the watch my grandfather gave me. A tear ran down my cheek because I knew that it had to go. The next morning, I cycled to the pawn shop, and when I put the watch on the glass counter, the guy slammed $400 into my hand. I laughed. "Don't play games. We both know the watch is worth at least $700. He shrugged. "400. Take it or leave it." I took it. That night, I set up the bike in the garage, polishing the pedals and handles with an old cloth and covering the bike under a blanket, all to make sure I could give my son the Christmas he'd never forget. I was waiting there early on Christmas morning, and at 6 a.m., I could hear him calling my name. "Dad, where are you?" I hollered. "In the garage, son." He came sprinting inside with a lumpy package in his hands. He ran straight past the bike and handed it to me. "Open your gift first, Dad." I peeled back the paper, and my whole body went still. It was my grandfather's watch. Sam shrugged and rattled it off like it was nothing. "I saw your wrist had been empty ever since that day at the mall, and I figured you heard what I said and sold it to get me the bike. I had my bike money saved, so I got it back." I immediately crouched down to his level and hugged him so tight he could barely breathe. "But son, the bike, that was yours." He pulled back, frowning like it was obvious. "I told you, Dad, I don't want anything for me." The mall Santa pulled my Every day for 2 years, the homeless man stood on our street corner singing for money. His clothes were torn and his hair was dirty, but my son still stood in the front row every time, clicking his fingers to the beat and clapping when he was done. But then one day, a woman in Gucci heels and a designer dress pushed past my son and walked up to Daryl while he was singing. She jabbed her tanned finger in his face and screamed, "Beggars like you need to stop polluting our streets." She knocked the microphone out of his hands and stomped it on the concrete until it broke. "Nobody wants to see someone so dirty and disgusting around them." She stormed away, and Daryl instantly broke. He dropped to the ground, picking up the broken pieces of his microphone and crying. It was the first time I'd ever seen him not smile. Every person who'd watched him for 2 years simply walked away, doing nothing to help him. 2 teenagers ran by Daryl while he was on the ground and snatched his coin cup, taking the coins he was going to use for food. My son gripped his head in horror and asked me why nobody was doing anything. Then he asked me why I wasn't doing anything. I felt ashamed, but before I could do anything, he was already bolting towards the toy store store nearby. I ran in and saw him pouring all his coins out and pointing at the microphones behind the counter. He told the cashier, "Keep the change," and ran past me with 2 microphones. Daryl was still on the ground, surrounded by broken mic pieces and curled into a ball because nobody had helped him. But my son sat down beside him. "This is for you." He pressed one of the microphones into Daryl's hands, and Daryl's eyes filled with tears. "You don't mind that I'm dirty?" My son shook his head. "You're not dirty. That woman who was mean to you has a dirty soul." Then he pulled out the second microphone and held it up. "And I'm gonna sing with you. Twice the singers, twice the money for you." Daryl let out a laugh through his tears, and they got up off the ground. They turned on their microphones and started singing together, while my son clicked his fingers to the beat. Daryl's smile was wide again. Every day for 2
Sorry.
I carefully set my new laptop on my couch and stood up to get a drink, but then my rich friend walked over right where I was sitting. "My legs are tired." He picked up my new laptop and chucked it towards the sofa. It bounced off the edge and hit the ground, and I heard a crack. I carefully set my new laptop on my couch and stood up to get a drink, but then my rich friend walked over right where I was sitting. "My legs are tired." He picked up my new laptop and chucked it towards the sofa. It bounced off the edge and hit the ground, and I heard a crack, but he just plopped on the couch and leaned back, scrolling his phone. I ran over with my fists clenched and knelt down. "Why the hell would you throw this? I worked all summer for it." I held up the laptop with a spiderweb crack down the screen, but he just laughed. "Relax, dude, my dad is a millionaire. He'll get you a new one." He pressed his phone to his ear, but when a few minutes later the door opened, a man in work boots and sunken eyes walked in. I was confused because he had holes in his shirt and didn't look like a millionaire at all, but my friend just called out, "Hey dad, I accidentally broke his laptop. Buy him a new one." His dad sighed and looked at the broken laptop. "How much was it?" $1,200. I gulped, and he instantly gripped his head in horror, whispering numbers to himself I couldn't hear, but my friend just snapped his fingers. "You heard him, Dad. $1,200. Now." He went back to scrolling his phone, and that's when the man's face twisted as he looked at his son. "I don't know what you think this is, but you must have forgotten that your real dad didn't want you. He gave you to me because he found you insufferable, and I don't have the kind of money he does." My jaw dropped, and my friend's face instantly went red with embarrassment. His thumb stopped on his screen, but his dad continued, "$1,200 is my rent money. Do you understand that?" I was about to tell him it's okay, he didn't need to get me a laptop, but he was already reaching into his wallet. He pressed the $1,200 into my chest with his shaking, calloused hands. I tried to refuse because this was his rent money, but he shook his head. "Take it. I'm responsible for him." My friend smirked because he'd gotten his way, but then the man reached over and grabbed my friend's phone. "But I'm selling this to make my rent money back." My friend lunged for it. "You can't sell my phone." But the man dropped it in his pocket and turned for the door. My friend stood there, red-faced with tears running down his eyes, and that's when the man turned back to him at the door. He smiled. "I love you like my own son, kid. That's why I'm not letting you get away with being an entitled brat." I carefully set my new laptop on my couch and stood up to get a drink, but then my rich friend walked over right where I was sitting. "My legs are tired." He picked up my new laptop and chucked it towards the sofa. It bounced off the edge and hit the ground, and I heard a crack, but he just plopped on the couch and leaned back. I carefully set my new laptop on my couch and stood up to get a drink, but then my teacher ripped the switch out of my hands mid-Hollow Knight boss fight and dropped it in her desk drawer. Mrs. Deborah slid the drawer shut and pointed at the clock. "You can come get it back after class." 2 weeks I'd been stuck on Nightmare King Grim, Hollow Knight's hardest fight. I'd snuck the switch in to grind through lunch and was one phase from beating him when the bell rang. I figured I could finish in class, not knowing today was test day. Now it was locked in her desk while she was passing out science tests. I was working through question 3 when her shoulders caught my eye. Hunched forward, brow tight, tongue poking out the corner of her mouth. 5 minutes in, I caught a sound from her desk, faint and unmistakable, and it was my boss music. Her thumbs were moving under the desk in tiny, precise bursts, and every few seconds her whole body flinched like she'd taken a hit. I raised my hand and asked for the bathroom. She waved me out without lifting her eyes, and I walked the long way around her desk. There it was, my switch wedged into her lap, Hollow Knight on the screen, 3 swings into the Nightmare King fight. I went back to my seat and stared at the test without reading a single question. The bell rang and everyone filed out and she called my name. She slid the switch across her desk without looking up from her gradebook. "You were one phase out from beating Nightmare King Grim. I had time during the test, so I finished him for you. Saves at the next bench. You're welcome, kid." I almost laughed out loud. I picked up the switch and the thumbsticks were still warm. My science teacher just cleared Hollow Knight's hardest boss during a science test, and I couldn't wait to tell the boys. My teacher ripped the switch out of my
firefly.
When a firefly bit me at a cookout, I dropped my burger and texted my boss I quit because I knew I'd just been chosen. I'd seen every superhero movie ever made. A bug bites you, you wake up swinging between skyscrapers. My brother asked if fireflies even have teeth, and I told him destiny doesn't answer stupid questions. I gave myself 1 week to master my powers and find my first bad guy. Day 1, I stood in my living room and snapped my wrist at the wall like I'd practiced 100 times. Nothing came out but a sneeze. I figured my powers just needed to warm up. Day 3, something twitched on my back, and 2 wings the size of my thumbnails unfolded behind me. I screamed so loud my neighbor banged on the wall. I could fly. I climbed onto my window ledge 2 floors up, spread my arms, and jumped. The wings flapped exactly hard enough to do absolutely nothing. I went straight down into the dumpster behind my building. Lying in a pile of banana peels, I noticed my hands were glowing. Not glowing cool, glowing like a nightlight in the middle of a sunny afternoon, where nobody could even tell. That was my big superpower. Not webs, not flying, not super strength. Just a human glow stick that was completely useless. The harder I panicked about wasting my one shot at being special, the brighter I burned, and I sat in that dumpster, ready to give up. That night, I walked to the corner store still glowing, ready to tell everyone the firefly thing was a bust. 2 guys came sprinting out with the register in their arms, headed right for the car parked behind me. I was so scared, I lit up like a stadium, so both of them threw their arms over their eyes and ran face first into the streetlight pole. They dropped on the sidewalk next to the busted register, out cold. I stood there glowing over 2 knocked out robbers, and the superpower I swore was useless had just stopped a robbery. I jumped up and down, then dropped to my knees crying, because I really was special. Spider-Man could never. When a firefly...
Sorry, y'all.
I was flying on a rescue helicopter outside the Grand Canyon when we got the call.
Please hurry, my sister needs help. This is Kayla. We're at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. My arm's stuck under a boulder and my little sister Dana is bleeding through the belt on her thigh.
I keyed my radio. We're coming to get you. Keep her talking. I checked my watch and announced to my team, it's 110 degrees down there. The bleeding in that heat is no joke. Her sister has around 2 hours to survive, and we're 90 minutes away. We were 20 minutes in when the heat turned on us. The air was too thin for the blades to work properly, and our ETA slid from 90 minutes toward the 2 hours Dana didn't have. I keyed Kayla's channel and heard her singing. I spoke, hello? She responded.
I sing to her when she's scared. She always tells me to shut up.
And her voice dropped.
She's not telling me to shut up anymore.
My heart was pounding, but they lost signal before I could respond. Our pilot made an announcement. The engine temperature is redlining. We have a decision to make. We can land and let her cool off, or keep going and risk destroying the engine. Setting down meant Dana bled out while the engine cooled. How far are we? He looked up ahead. Around 12 minutes away. I grabbed the safety handle. We're going. We were 10 minutes away when smoke filled the cockpit and seeped into the passenger seats. Me and my crew braced ourselves as the helicopter started swerving downwards uncontrollably, and the canyon wall swung through the glass. We crashed into the canyon and my eyes slowly shut and I blacked out. I woke up hanging sideways in my straps. All 4 of us were alive and the handheld still worked. Dispatch answered my mayday. Second helicopter is heading towards you. They're 2 hours from your position. That's the fastest we can do for you on a day like this. I started hyperventilating because Dana didn't have 2 hours, but there was no way to get her help any sooner. I keyed her channel, and when I heard her voice, I spoke. Kayla, our helicopter crashed and our supplies are destroyed. She responded,
Okay, but Dana stopped answering me a while ago. I've been singing to her, but I think my little sister is gone.
I pressed my forehead against my knees and she kept speaking.
It's so hot down here. Can you come sooner? I don't know how much longer I can hold on.
My eyes filled with tears. Kayla, the next crew is 2 hours out. I was flying on a rescue helicopter outside the Grand Canyon when we got the call.
Please hurry, my sister needs help. This is Kayla. We're at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. My arm's stuck under a boulder and my little sister Dana is bleeding through the belt.
I watched it again.
My mother had a chessboard set up in the living room, and every few weeks she'd make just one move on either side. It was like she was playing against herself in a game that lasted literal years. She taught me to play too, but always on different boards, never once letting me touch the chessboard in the living room. That board is special, she'd say, moving a knight or bishop, then leaving it alone, sometimes for months. It had an address on it she claimed was just the store she bought the board. But then one summer she died, and I hosted a yard sale to clear her house. Immediately, a man I didn't know got out of his car and asked me if I had the special chessboard. I said, "How do you know about the chessboard?" But he just smiled and said, "Come with me." I shook my head because I wasn't going to randomly follow a stranger. However, he pulled out a paper and wrote down an address. It was the same address on the chessboard. I got in my car to follow him, and we drove for an hour to the address. I walked to the front door, and an old black woman in a wheelchair opened it. She said my mother's name and told me to come inside. She explained that her and my mother were best friends for over 50 years. years, but my mother was white, and growing up in the South in the 60s, she wasn't allowed to have black friends. So they played chess via mail for over 50 years to keep their friendship, making one move each time the other's move arrived. I teared up, and when I walked into the living room, I saw a chessboard set up in the exact position my mother's was before she died. I sat down and played the exact move my mom would have made. My mother had a chessboard set up in the living room. My big brother Patrick showed me his VR headset and said, "Do you want to prank Grandpa?" I instantly nodded because I wanted to play with my older brother. But when Grandpa walked into the room, Patrick placed the headset on his head and laughed. "Check this out, Grandpa. It's modern technology." He turned it on, and Grandpa immediately started screaming and dropped to the ground, shouting, "Please make it stop." I got a bad feeling and asked, "Patrick, what did you do?" But he just pulled out his phone. I loaded up a realistic D-Day simulation on Call of Duty. Right now, Grandpa sees grenades flying at him as well as blood and gunfire. My legs froze because Grandpa had served at D-Day, and it gave him PTSD for life. He was now being forced to relive it. I ran to take the headset off because Grandpa was curled in a ball crying, but Patrick pushed me to the floor. "You said you wanted to prank him." I realized I wasn't strong enough to overpower him, and when I raised my head, I saw him sellotaping the VR headset to Grandpa so he couldn't take it off. Then he took his phone out and started recording. Grandpa sobbed, trying his hardest to remove the headset, and Patrick was doubled over laughing. This is going straight to TikTok. I knew I had to do something because Grandpa had given up trying to remove the headset and was now just praying at the sky. His best friends were getting ripped apart by mortar shells in front of him, and he could only watch. I tried to lunge past Patrick to reach Grandpa, but he stopped me with one hand like it was nothing. Then we both heard it. If I've done it once, I'll do it again. Grandpa was rising to his feet, his legs trembling, and I realized he fully believed the war he was seeing was real. He grabbed his cane and raised it like a gun, charging straight ahead. The cane hit Patrick in the chest, and he fell to the floor. I screamed, "Grandpa, stop!" But he was already on his knees, screaming, "Die, German, die." He jabbed Patrick in the sternum with his cane, thinking it was a knife. My heart pounded as I ran behind him and ripped as hard as I could, and the sellotaped headset finally came off. Grandpa suddenly jolted up, looking at me with wild, bloodshot eyes. "What's happening? Where's the enemy?" He pointed the cane at me. Then he looked down at his grandson under him. Patrick groaned and wheezed, and I realized his ribs were cracked and purple. Grandpa stared up at me, his face returning to normal. "I'm not at war?" I shook my head while heaving. "No, Grandpa, you're at home. Now let's go get some donuts." I threw the VR headset onto Patrick's chest as we walked away. My big brother
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, oh yeah. I guess we have this one.
A toddler was doing a crossword puzzle alone on the park bench, so I crouched down and asked if she was lost. She swatted my hand away. "I am a 40-year-old woman, you absolute buffoon." I stepped back and saw she was 2 feet tall, and I figured she was just a confused toddler who'd wandered off, so I scooped her up to bring her to the police station, absolutely convinced I was doing the right thing. She kicked and twisted the whole way there. "Unhand me this instant, you enormous oaf! This is kidnapping!" I took out the tiny stuffed bear key ring from my pocket. "You cutie, calm down now." I waved the bear in her face. "Look, someone wants to meet you." She pinched me as hard as she could. "You galloping imbecile. You must have the same intellectual capacity as a houseplant." A mom on another bench pulled her kid closer as I marched past. I held her out with 2 hands at arm's length until we got to the police station. She scoffed. "Now you'll finally see what I was talking about." I took back the bear and set her on the counter. She smoothed her tiny blazer, lifted her chin, and nodded. "Afternoon, officer." The officer nodded like they knew each other. "Good to see you, Diane." He pointed at me. "So, who's this guy?" She rolled her eyes. "Another idiot who thinks I'm a helpless child." He typed her name into his monitor and turned the screen around. "Diane Holding, 43 years old, world's smallest woman." She straightened her tie, lifted her chin, and delivered her verdict. "You've made a rather profound error in judgment." My mouth was open in shock, and the bear was still dangling from my finger. She tilted her head. "Are you lost?" She rallied out the door and climbed back onto a bench to pick up her crossword right where I'd interrupted it, while I stayed behind to explain why I'd hauled a grown woman in off the street. A toddler was doing a
Okay. So without being sad, we hope you all have an excellent day. And before we finish, subscribe to join the Yahya gang. And before we finish off this video, go subscribe to his story and see you on the next video. Bye.